House and make John Boehner Speaker. In the Senate, the Democrats and their leader are hanging by a thread. It's Election Day in America. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, rehearsing a terror attack. Officials say the terrorists behind the failed printer cartridge bombings did a test run just weeks ago. And Tea Partiers, they energized voters, struck fear into Republicans and Democrats alike, and they insist they're here to stay.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
And good evening, everyone. Control of the new 112th Congress is on the line this midterm election day, and the first of the polls will be closing at the top of this hour. Republicans are widely favored to take back the House and make John Boehner Speaker. Now, to do that, they need to win 39 more seats than they have in the current House. Meanwhile, in the Senate, the Republicans are facing a more daunting battle. They have 41 seats. They need 10 more to take control and make Mitch McConnell Majority Leader. We have our CBS News election team deployed at key locations across the country and here in election headquarters. First, congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes.
Did you vote for me?
Yeah. Some voters were impassioned.
I voted Democratic because I believe that the Democrats deserve a chance to prove that they can do what they set out to do.
Others were impatient.
People don't have jobs, and we need a change.
With control of Congress at stake, voters came to the polls agreeing on one thing. They're glad it's over.
All campaigns were really nasty this particular election cycle.
Everybody talks along party lines so much that it's hard to think independently.
After a stormy election cycle, perhaps those most relieved to see Election Day arrive are those who've been running in this 2-year midterm marathon.
We've left everything on the field. That's all you can do.
I might sneak in a nap before it's over.
And the man poised to lead the House if Republicans take control sounded more confident than ever.
If you look at what the races around the country, I think we have a real opportunity to win the majority, and hopefully my colleagues will elect me Speaker.
Democrats told us today they are seeing a higher voter turnout in these midterm elections for both parties, but they said Republicans do seem to have a slight edge, Katie.
And Nancy, you have your trusty iPad there. Let's talk more about the Senate. As we said, the magic number for Republicans there is 10.
That's right, Katie. Republicans need to win 10 Democratic seats, and 12 of them are vulnerable, the ones you see outlined on this map behind me in blue. Now, Democrats tell us at this hour they're feeling very confident they'll hold on to 4 of them: Connecticut, West Virginia over here, and then in the West, California and Washington State. But they're very nervous about several other states. They don't know how things are going to turn out in Pennsylvania, the ultimate swing state, in Illinois, President Obama's former seat, in Colorado, one of the most expensive races in the country, and of course, Katie, the mother of all races, here in Nevada, where Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is going up against a Tea Party candidate. The latest polls there show her with a slight edge.
Meanwhile, what House races, Nancy, will we be watching carefully that might indicate sort of the mood of the country tonight as the night goes on?
Well, we're going to be watching races in the House like this one in New Hampshire's 1st District. It's one of several races in New England where Republicans have a real shot at toppling Democrats. And as of right now, there are no Republicans in the House of Representatives from New England, so this would be a real shift. We're also going to be watching to see if the Republican wave can topple veteran Democrats like John Spratt of South Carolina. He's been in Congress for 28 years. He's the chair of the powerful Budget Committee, but he's facing a tough challenge as well, Katie.
All right, Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thanks so much. What issues are on the minds of voters this year? We talked to Americans after they cast their ballots, and as Anthony Mason tells us, this year, more than ever, it's all about the economy. Right, Anthony?
Overwhelmingly the number one issue, Katie. More than 8 out of 10 voters in our exit poll told us they're worried about the economy. There have been 3.3 million foreclosures just since President Obama took office. The unemployment rate's been above 9% for a year and a half now. That's translated into huge frustration with government. 73% told us they're dissatisfied or angry with government. This number is very interesting because it's actually higher than 1994, a year in which in the midterm elections Republicans Republicans picked up 52 seats. Voters were also frustrated with the president. 55% told us they believe his policies will hurt the country, and nearly half said they would like to see President Obama's health care reforms repealed. But Republicans were not immune from criticism either. The disapproval rating of both parties, Republicans and Democrats, was an identical 53% today. Katie, it looks like voters are angry with everybody.
And I know you'll be watching the exit polls all night long. Anthony, thank you. Bob Schieffer is our chief Washington correspondent and anchor of Face the Nation. Jeff Greenfield, our senior political correspondent. Bob, first you, Democrats are afraid this is becoming a referendum on Barack Obama. We just saw some of those numbers. Is that what this is turning out to be?
If this is a referendum on Barack Obama, and Republicans have been saying for weeks that's what it was, this is going to be a very long night for Democrats, because 54% of the people who we surveyed in this early polling said they disapprove of Obama. 45% approve. People do not like the direction the country is going, according to these early surveys. You know, we've been saying, Katie, that this could be a blowout for Republicans, and we're seeing nothing in these early polls to suggest otherwise.
Meanwhile, Jeff, if this does translate into big Republican gains, what is the take-home message for the winners?
Well, that's going to be the key question here, because veteran Republicans remember 1994 when they took the Congress. Speaker Gingrich, then Speaker Gingrich, tried to push through a very aggressive agenda, and Bill Clinton, then president, actually trumped the Republicans politically. So some of the veterans are saying we better be careful not to misread this. But you've also, if these numbers are right, are going to see massive numbers of new freshman Republicans coming in with blood in their eyes, determined to stop Obama at almost any cost. And I think you're going to see a split in the Republicans of what that lesson is.
And, Bob, do you think this mix of Tea Party winners and establishment Republicans will equal gridlock? What do you think will happen? Will they be willing to work with the White House? Our polls say 78% of respondents want some kind of compromise.
I think that's right, but I think it's going to be something within the Republican Party first. I talked to John Boehner, who will probably be the Speaker if the Republicans take the House, and he said, you know what, it's going to be a wild ride. He said, we got a lot of people to bring together. So he knows what his first challenge is going to be.
And you've got veterans coming into the Senate, relative moderates in the Republican Party. You've got Senator Jim DeMint of South Carolina, who backed some of the Tea Party people. So the internecine warfare might be very interesting to watch, Katie.
Right. It really will be interesting to watch. Jeff Greenfield and Bob Schieffer, and we'll be watching it unfold all night long. Thank you both so much. In addition to the congressional races tonight, 37 states are choosing a governor. And one reason that is so important is in most states, the governor has a big role in redrawing congressional districts. In California, Democrat Jerry Brown is hoping to get his old job back. He faces Republican Meg Whitman, who has spent a record $140 million of her own money. In the bellwether state of Ohio, it's Democrat Ted Strickland against Republican John Kasich. And in Florida, Republican Rick Scott is battling Democrat Alex Sink. Meanwhile, President Obama is not on the ballot, but he's been campaigning as if he were. And many voters say, as Bob has, this election is a referendum on his presidency. Chip Reed is at the White House tonight.
Even on Election Day, the president was still campaigning.
If you vote, you get a say in that future.
Targeting young voters on websites like YouTube and AOL.com.
When you don't vote, you leave the decisions that affect your life up to someone else.
And reaching out to minority voters with another series of interviews on urban radio stations, which included some harsh words for Republicans.
I mean, the Republican Party, what they've said is we want to cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires, and we're going to pay for it by cutting education spending by 20%.
And the president was doing those interviews right into the evening, hoping to convince people to vote on their way home from work. Katie?
Chip Reed. Thank you, Chip. The highest profile Senate race tonight is in Nevada, where, as we've mentioned, Democratic Majority Leader Harry Reid is in the fight of his life against Republican Sharon Angle. Ben Tracy is at Reid headquarters in Las Vegas following that very tight race. And, Ben, it is a real nail-biter.
It sure is, Katie, and the folks in this room are hoping this will be the site of a Harry Reid victory party later tonight and not a concession speech. But as you've said right now, this race could go either way. Now, earlier today, Sharon Angle, his opponent, cast her ballot in her hometown of Reno, Nevada. Meanwhile, Senator Reid was in Las Vegas thanking volunteers and urging his supporters to get out and vote. Now, early voting started here in Nevada 2 weeks ago, and more than half the people expected to vote in this race did so before Election Day. About 6,500 more Democrats than Republicans cast their votes early, but this race likely will still come down to who turned out more voters today. Now, Sharon Angle is also going to be heading down here to Las Vegas tonight. She's hosting an event at the Venetian Resort just down Las Vegas Boulevard. And the Tea Party Express, which backed Angle in this race, they've actually chosen to host one of their gatherings right here in the same hotel as Harry Reid, perhaps hoping to gloat a little later on tonight. Katie.
All right, Ben Tracy. Ben, thank you. In California, Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer is in a tough race with Republican challenger Carly Fiorina. Bill Whitaker is at Boxer headquarters in Los Angeles.
Republican Carly Fiorina cast her vote today and cast her fate to California voters. She pumped $6.5 million of her own dollars into her campaign to unseat three-term Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer. With unemployment and voter dissatisfaction high in this deep blue state, conservative Fiorina is giving liberal Boxer a run for her money.
Barbara Boxer is a 34-year career politician who has done nothing for the people of California.
Boxer is counting on the president's appeal here and the Democrats' formidable get-out-the-vote effort to seal the deal.
I'm not worried. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Now, that shows you what kind of a year this is. In a state that hasn't sent a Republican to the Senate since 1988, the best the Democrat can muster this year is cautious optimism. Katie?
Bill Whitaker at Boxer headquarters in Los Angeles. Thank you, Bill. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News this election day, how Tea Partiers turned their anger into action and became a national movement that could be here to stay. But up next, the printer cartridge bomb attack didn't succeed, but officials say a test run did. Baghdad was hit tonight by a series of coordinated attacks, at least 13 using everything from car bombs to mortars. The targets were public squares, shopping districts, and restaurants, mostly in Shiite areas. 76 people were killed, more than 200 wounded. The attacks came just hours after funerals for some of the 58 who died in Sunday's siege at a Christian church in Baghdad. Fugitive terrorist Anwar al-Awlaki, the American-born cleric linked to the attempted underwear bombing, was put on trial today in Yemen in absentia. He's charged in the killing of a French contractor. Officials believe the underwear bomb was made by the same person who built the printer cartridge bombs that were intercepted last week. And as Homeland Security correspondent Bob Orr reports, the plotters may have made a dry run.
In mid-September, U.S. intelligence got a credible tip that someone, possibly connected with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, had just shipped 3 packages to Chicago. The information was so specific, counterterrorism agents overseas were able to intercept and search the packages. Inside were papers, religious books, computer materials, and other common items like compact discs. But the boxes contained no threats, no explosives, and no hint that Chicago might be a terror target. So the packages went on to their Chicago destinations, which turned up no connections to the Yemen terror group. Now law enforcement officials suspect those September shipments may have been a dry run, a test of air cargo and distribution logistics. The theory is terrorists tracked the packages online to determine when the boxes were in the air, on the ground, and when they were delivered, a timetable useful for setting timers on future bombs. Sources say the 2 printer bombs found Friday in Great Britain and Dubai appeared to have timing mechanisms and were once again destined for Chicago.
The printer bombs were also stopped by a specific tip, and intelligence officials say that dry run helped drive a rapid response this time, when the threat was real. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
The bloodshed in video games may not be real, but some say it has a dangerous effect on the children who play them. A California law meant to keep these graphic images away from kids was ruled unconstitutional by a federal appeals court. But today, the case made it to the next level, the U.S. Supreme Court. Here's Chief Legal Correspondent Jan Crawford.
The violence is sadistic. Killing, torture, sexual assault in video games available to children. California passed a law 5 years ago to block the sale of violent games to minors. the industry fought back.
California statute is unwarranted, unnecessary, and clearly unconstitutional.
In the Supreme Court, the justices were divided. Justice Stephen Breyer said the government can restrict sexually explicit material to stop minors from buying magazines like Playboy. But the 13-year-old child can go in and buy one of these video games of gratuitous torture of children. What sense is there to that? Justice Antonin Scalia sided with free speech. Some of the Grimm's fairy tales are quite grim, he said. Are you going to ban them too? But supporters of the law say video games are different.
These are interactive, so you have the minors, actually being the ones manning the guns and soliciting prostitutes.
But the video game industry argues the government has never restricted violent content, unlike sexually explicit materials, and that it's too late to start now. Jan Crawford, CBS News, the Supreme Court.
There is still no cure for the common cold, but there's a way to reduce your chances of getting one. That story is next. The influence of the Tea Party could be the story of campaign 2010. Not bad considering it didn't even exist 2 years ago. The movement's been turning voter anger into energy coast to coast, as evidenced by a bus tour by one Tea Party group, the Tea Party Express. The tour began 2 weeks ago in Nevada and just wrapped up yesterday in New Hampshire. But as Chief National Correspondent Byron Pitts reports, the Tea Party is just getting started.
Edison, New Jersey. With caffeine in their veins, their marching orders in hand.
8:47.
These Tea Party patriot foot soldiers spent the last few months here in search of converts.
Are you ready?
Like all Tea Parties, they're energized by goals of reduced federal spending, smaller government, and free markets. In the last year, they have taken their message door to door in neighborhoods across the country. According to a CBS News exit poll, 41% of voters support the Tea Party, which is actually not a party at all, rather a movement by people united by outrage over the rising federal debt and spending.
Thank you so much.
A potent force is the Tea Party Express, which promotes and funds conservative candidates boasting about 400,000 members nationwide. But the largest national Tea Party organization is the Tea Party Patriots, with more than 2,800 chapters across the country. Several Tea Party groups have sparked criticism for using racist slurs and images at marches around the country. Organizers say each group sets its own agenda.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
With no traditional top-down chain of command in the network, their call to action is simple.
Do something. No more couch potatoes in the Tea Party. That's passe. Everyone's up and they're doing something.
This was something that just truly bubbled up.
Jenny Beth Martin is a co-founder of the Tea Party Patriots.
It's often rather real or imagined, perceived as angry. The images that you see from some of the Tea Party rallies across the country, the language in those signs, the level of passion in some of the attendance.
Yes, there's definitely an element of anger. We're not just angry and throwing stones. We're angry and we're saying, but this is what we want and this is what we stand for as well.
But regardless of who gets elected, Martin says their work has just begun.
If they're not going to stand up for our core values, then we'll turn around 2 years from now in 2012 and find people who will do it.
And that, they say, is a Tea Party promise. Byron Pitts, CBS News, New York.
And if you're keeping score, 130 candidates have Tea Party backing in these midterm elections. Things are going to get very interesting very soon. Polls are about to close in 6 states. Control of Congress is at stake. All 435 House seats are up for grabs. Republicans need a net gain of 39 to take control, and many polls suggest they'll get quite a few more than that. In the Senate, the GOP needs 10 more seats to take over, a much more difficult task. Stay with CBS News and this CBS station for election updates throughout the evening. Then join our CBS News election team for special hour-long wrap-ups with the latest returns and analysis at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and again at 1 a.m. Eastern. Our live coverage will be available at cbsnews.com and at youtube.com/CBS News. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric reporting from CBS News election headquarters in New York. I'll see you again soon. The Democrats and their leader are hanging by a thread. It's Election Day in America. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, rehearsing a terror attack. Officials say the terrorists behind the failed printer cartridge bombings did a test run just weeks ago. And Tea Partiers, they energized voters, struck fear into Republicans and Democrats alike, and they insist they're here to stay.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
And this is a special Western edition. Good evening, everyone. Control of the new 112th Congress is on the line this midterm election night. The polls are now closed in more than half the states, including Arkansas, where CBS News projects Republican John Boozman has defeated Senator Blanche Lincoln. She's the first incumbent Democrat in the Senate to lose a seat tonight. Another Senate pickup for the GOP, Indiana. Dan Coates takes the seat of retiring Democrat Evan Bayh. In the bellwether state of Ohio, we project Rob Portman the winner. The seat remains Republican. In Connecticut, Democrat Richard Blumenthal is the projected winner in his race against Republican Linda McMahon, former CEO of the WWE. In Florida, Tea Party favorite Marco Rubio wins a three-way race, a key hold for the Republicans. And in Kentucky, another win for the Tea Party. Rand Paul defeats Democrat Jack Conway. In Delaware, Democrat Chris Coons defeats Christine O'Donnell for Joe Biden's old seat. And in New Hampshire, Republican Kelly Ayotte defeats Democrat Paul Hodes. Republicans need to capture 10 Democratic seats to take control of the Senate, and so far they've picked up 2. In the House, it's still very early in the counting, but the Republicans have won a handful of Democratic seats. They need a net gain of 39 to take control. We have our CBS News election team deployed at key locations across the country and here in election headquarters. And first, we turn to congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes. As we mentioned, Republicans in the Senate have picked up 2 seats so far. They need 8 more.
That's right, Katie. Democrats are breathing a bit of a sigh of relief after holding on to Connecticut, but there are so many other states across the map here that are danger zones for them. You can see all these states outlined in blue are all seats where Democrats are at risk of losing tonight, and they're particularly worried about a handful of them. Pennsylvania, the ultimate swing state. Illinois, the president's former seat. Colorado, one of the most expensive races in the country. And of course, Nevada, Katie, this is the mother of all of those races. Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, in the fight of his life against a Tea Party candidate, Sharon Angle.
They'll be watching that carefully, but they're celebrating 2 Tea Party victories already tonight.
That's right. The Republicans are thrilled that they were able to pick up 2 seats that had Tea Party contestants in them, Florida and Kentucky. And of course, we're still watching. They did lose, or looks like they're on their way to losing in Delaware, which is, of course, where Christine O'Donnell was running.
Right. And tell us about some of the House races, Nancy.
Well, Katie, we've already seen that Republicans have picked up 6 seats that were formerly held by Democrats. So it's not looking very good right now for the Democrats. And here's one that's particularly devastating to the White House in Virginia's 5th District, where Tom Perriello, who's a freshman Democrat, he was very supportive of the president. And in return, the president actually came out and supported him, campaigned for him. He goes down tonight against the Republican Robert Hurd. In Indiana, one of several seats that was at risk of changing hands, Larry Bouchon, a Republican doctor who's running on repealing what he calls Obamacare. He's victorious as well tonight.
All right, Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thank you so much. Bob Schieffer is our chief Washington correspondent and anchor of Face the Nation. Jeff Greenfield, our senior political correspondent. Bob, let me start with you. Is this a referendum on President Obama and the Democratic agenda?
That's what the Republicans said it was going to be, and I must say I'm beginning to agree with them, because people who are going to the polls tonight, our early exit polls show that 53% of people who voted today, at least the early voters, disapprove of Barack Obama. There are some really key statistics here. Young people who were 18% of the vote in 2008, only 9% of the vote this time around. They were heavily for Barack Obama in 2008. Another very interesting stat, Katie, women. In 2008, they went for Barack Obama 56%. This time, they're splitting, 49% Republican, 49% Democrat. So the people who put Barack Obama in office are kind of off of him today in today's voting.
Independents as well, right?
And independents also are breaking for Republicans rather than Democrats, as they did in 2008.
Jeff, do you think in some ways this is also a referendum on the role of government in our society? We've heard so much discussion about that in recent months, and it seems to be motivating people at the polls.
The numbers suggest that's so. 56% of the people in the exit polls said the government is doing too much that ought to be left to business. Maybe that's health care, you know, whatever it is. 80% of those people
the
are
bailouts,
breaking
by the way.
80% of the people who feel that way are going Republican. 38% say the government ought to do more. They're breaking 80 to 20 for Democrats, but a whole lot more people seem to regard the government as having overreached. And among that group, one thing we know about independents, they are generally not very happy about big government spending, even when they vote Democratic. This time, as Bob points out, they're going Republican.
And just give us a bit of perspective. It's not unusual for the party in power to lose seats in the midterm elections.
It happens almost every time, but the question is how much. I mean, you know, Clinton in '94, the Democrats lost 52 House seats, 8 Senate seats. Do remember, Clinton, as with many presidents who suffer this midterm loss, they get reelected next time. So you can't project into the future this referendum that Bob, I think, quite rightly points out is going on tonight.
All right. Jeff Greenfield, Bob Schieffer. Gentlemen, thank you. What issues are on the minds of voters this year? We talked to Americans after they cast their ballots, and as Anthony Mason tells us, this year more than ever, it is all about the economy, isn't it, Anthony?
The economy is the runaway #1 issue. Nearly 9 out of 10 voters on our exit poll told us they are worried about the economy. More than 3.3 million houses have gone into foreclosure since the president took office. The unemployment rate has been above 9% for a year and a half now. That's led to growing frustration with government. 74% told us they were dissatisfied or angry with government. This number is particularly interesting because the dissatisfaction level is actually higher than 1994 when Republicans picked up 52 seats in the midterm election. Voters are also frustrated with the president. 52% told us they believe the president's policies will hurt the country, and nearly half told us they'd like to see the president's health care reforms repealed. Republicans were not immune to criticism, though. The disapproval rating for both parties was almost identical. A majority disapproved of both Republicans and Democrats. So it seems this year voters are angry with just about everybody. Katie?
Yeah, throw the bums out on steroids. All right, Anthony Mason, thanks so much, Anthony. In addition to the congressional races tonight, 37 states are choosing a governor, and one reason that's so important is in most states, the governor has a big role in redrawing congressional districts. In California, Democrat Jerry Brown is hoping to get his old job back. He faces Republican Meg Whitman, who has spent a record $140 million of her own money. In the bellwether state of Ohio, it's Democrat Ted Strickland against Republican John Kasich. And in Florida, Republican Rick Scott is battling Democrat Alex Sink. President Obama is not on the ballot, but he's been campaigning as if he were. And many voters say this election, as Bob mentioned, is a referendum on his presidency. Chip Reed is at the White House.
Even on Election Day, the president was still campaigning.
If you vote, you get a say in that future.
Targeting young voters on websites like YouTube and AOL.com.
When you don't vote, you leave the decisions that affect your life up to someone else.
And reaching out to minority voters with another series of interviews on urban radio stations, which included some harsh words for Republicans.
I mean, the Republican Party, what they've said is we want to cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires, and we're going to pay for it by cutting education spending by 20%.
And the president was doing those interviews right into the evening, hoping to convince people to vote on their way home from work. Katie?
Chip Reed. Thank you, Chip. The highest profile Senate race tonight is in Nevada, where, as we've mentioned, Democratic Majority Leader Harry Reid is in the fight of his life against Republican Sharon Angle. Ben Tracy is at Reid headquarters in Las Vegas following that very tight race. And, Ben, it is a real nail-biter.
It sure is, Katie, and the folks in this room are hoping this will be the site of a Harry Reid victory party later tonight and not a concession speech. But as you've said right now, this race could go either way. Now, earlier today, Sharon Angle, his opponent, cast her ballot in her hometown of Reno, Nevada. Meanwhile, Senator Reid was in Las Vegas thanking volunteers and urging his supporters to get out and vote. Now, early voting started here in Nevada 2 weeks ago, and more than half the people expected to vote in this race did so before Election Day. About 6,500 more Democrats than Republicans cast their votes early, but this race likely will still come down to who turned out more voters today. Now, Sharon Angle is also going to be heading down here to Las Vegas tonight. She's hosting an event at the Venetian Resort just down Las Vegas Boulevard. And the Tea Party Express, which backed Angle in this race, they've actually chosen to host one of their gatherings right here in the same hotel as Harry Reid, perhaps hoping to gloat a little later on tonight. Katie.
All right, Ben Tracy. Ben, thank you. In California, Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer is in a tough race with Republican challenger Carly Fiorina. Bill Whitaker is at Boxer headquarters in Los Angeles.
Republican Carly Fiorina cast her vote today and cast her fate to California voters. She pumped $6.5 million of her own dollars into her campaign to unseat three-term Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer. With unemployment and voter dissatisfaction high in this deep blue state, conservative Fiorina is giving liberal Boxer a run for her money.
Barbara Boxer is a 34-year career politician who has done nothing for the people of California.
Boxer is counting on the president's appeal here and the Democrats' formidable get-out-the-vote effort to seal the deal.
I'm not worried. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Now, that shows you what kind of a year this is. In a state that hasn't sent a Republican to the Senate since 1988, the best the Democrat can muster this year is cautious optimism. Katie?
Bill Whitaker at Boxer headquarters in Los Angeles. Thank you, Bill. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News this election day, how Tea Partiers turned their anger into action and became a national movement that could be here to stay. But up next, the printer cartridge bomb attack didn't succeed, but officials say a test run did. And updating our top story, the battle for Congress. Republicans have two pickups in the Senate. CBS News projects Dan Coats, the winner in Indiana, taking the seat of retiring Democrat Evan Bayh. And in Arkansas, John Bozeman unseats Democrat Blanche Lincoln. But a big win for the Democrats in West Virginia. They keep the late Robert Byrd seat. Joe Manchin defeats John Racy. In Connecticut, Democrat Richard Blumenthal defeats former wrestling mogul Linda McMahon. Meanwhile, two Tea Party victories of note. Marco Rubio wins in the Sunshine State, and in Kentucky, Rand Paul. In the House, Republicans have a net gain of 8 seats in the early going. They need 39 in all by the end of the night in order to take control. Stay with CBS News and this CBS station for election updates throughout the evening. Then join our CBS News election team for special hour-long wrap-ups with the latest returns and analysis at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and again at 1 a.m. Eastern. Our live coverage will be available at cbsnews.com and at youtube.com/CBS News. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric reporting from CBS News election headquarters in New York. I'll see you again soon. Republicans take back the House. Those flashing red seats used to belong to Democrats. CBS News estimates they will win more than the 218 seats they need to take control. It is a much tougher battle for the GOP in the Senate, however. They need to pick up 10 seats now held by Democrats. So far, they have picked up 3. The gavel of power is about to pass from Nancy Pelosi to John Boehner in the House. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is fighting for his political life in Nevada, where polls have just closed, and Sarah Palin and the Tea Party are ready to celebrate. It's election night on CBS.
Change doesn't come from the top. It comes from the bottom. If you're tired of all the takeovers and bailouts, that's what elections are for.
We are not going back.
Let's restore America and restore honor.
We need all of you fired up.
And good evening, everyone. We are witnessing a major shift in political power in the nation's capital. CBS News is projecting that when all the votes are counted in this midterm election, the Republicans will have won control of the House of Representatives. After making history as the first woman speaker 4 years ago, Nancy Pelosi of California will be turning over the gavel to John Boehner of Ohio. And we will be looking at all the implications of this over the next hour, beginning with our congressional correspondent, Nancy Cordes. And Nancy, we're projecting a net gain in the House for the Republicans of 45 seats. How were they able to pull this off?
Well, take a look at this map, Katie, and you'll see that they're pulling it off by winning seats in every part of the country, particularly here in the South, where they've already picked off 12 seats that were formerly held by Democrats, including 3 seats already in Virginia. Tom Perriello is one of those Democrats. He's one of a wave of freshman and sophomore Democrats who are being beaten tonight. He was a full-throated supporter of the president's agenda. The president campaigned for him, so this is a big blow for the White House. In the Midwest, the Republicans have already picked off 2 Democratic seats, including this one in the 9th District, Barron Hill. He was elected in 2006. He was a blue dog Democrat, Katie, fiscally conservative, but that wasn't enough to save him. He's defeated by Todd Young, who was endorsed by Sarah Palin and who is a Tea Party member.
And Nancy, this Republican wave may, in fact, wash away many of the gains that the Democrats made back in 2006 and 2008.
That's right, Katie. And take a look at this. This is particularly significant. You see this 1 up here in the east? Now, that doesn't sound like much, but guess where that 1 seat is? It's in New Hampshire. Right now, Republicans don't have a single seat in all of New England. Well, that's about to change because Frank Ginta, another Tea Party candidate, picks up that seat. He defeats the incumbent Carol Shea Porter.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thanks very much. We are joined now by Bob Schieffer and Jeff Greenfield, 2 of the keenest political minds in the country, I might add. And Bob, this is a huge development. Obviously, it was expected. Everyone was wondering how many seats they would gain, not just whether they would, in fact, take control of the House. But it is a big referendum on Barack Obama, a huge repudiation of him and the Democratic agenda, isn't it?
Republicans said this was not about them. It was about Barack Obama, a referendum on him, and indeed that is what it has turned out to be. I mean, this is more than just a message to Barack Obama. This is kind of a Halloween rerun here because, you know, people are just saying this is someone who came to office, promised change, and the change didn't happen. The administration raised these, raised these expectations above the moon in a society that already is pretty careful about, wanting instant change. They didn't get it, and Barack Obama's paying the price tonight.
And what a difference 2 years makes, Jeff. Just 2 years ago, the GOP was dead in the water. People were going to say it was going to take a generation to revive the grand old party, and here we are tonight.
Right, and I think what we're seeing here is a national mood. This is a year when all politics isn't local, when the dissatisfaction with the economy and with the overreach of government has hit a hammer into Obama's coalition. Women are breaking no better than even for Democrats. Independents are breaking heavily for Republicans, and that's what's going on.
All right, let's go to take a look at some of these Senate races, to the battle for the Senate. It is still underway and polls are still open in the West. The Republicans need to pick up 10 Democratic seats to reach a 51-seat majority. So far, CBS News estimates they have picked up 3 in Arkansas. Republican John Bozeman ousts incumbent Democrat Blanche Lincoln, denies her a 3rd term. Indiana, Dan Coates, who served in the Senate back in the 90s, is heading back. He wins the seat of retiring Democrat Evan Bayh. North Dakota, Republican John Hoeven, as we said, the projected winner of the seat held by Byron Dorgan, who's retiring. Now, the polls are closed in Nevada, but no projection yet in that tick-tight battle between Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid and Republican challenger Sharon Angle. In Florida, we project Republican Marco Rubio, the winner of a 3-way race with independent Charlie Crist and Democrat Kendrick Meek. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, the winner over former WWE CEO Linda McMahon. In Delaware, Chris Coons, this was a widely watched, very colorful race, defeats Christine O'Donnell, who made that famous ad saying she wasn't a witch. In Bellwether, Ohio, Republican Rob Portman keeps the seat Republican. And no surprise in Arizona, Republican John McCain hangs on to his seat. Bob Schieffer, we've been talking about the Senate. Of course, the Republicans have won control of the House. There was a possibility, and still is, that they could control the Senate, but it's going to be an uphill and very hard climb.
If there is any good news for Democrats tonight, it is going to be that they probably will hold on to the Senate. Let me show you a little chart here. Now, Mitch McConnell, who is the Senate Republican leader, he says they are probably going to hold all the Republican seats that they have up tonight, but he says if they're going to take the Senate, they're going to have to take 10 of those 12 Senate seats right there that are now held by Democrats. Now, they've already taken 3 of them, but the important thing is the the Democrats have taken 2, which means if the Democrats are going to lose control of the Senate, Republicans have to get all the rest of those seats that are in black there tonight. That's a pretty tall order.
All right, and let's talk about some of those seats, Nancy Cordes, that we're keeping an eye on as the night progresses. There's some very, very tight races.
That's right, Katie. And although the polls have already closed in 2 of the states, Pennsylvania and Illinois, they're still nail-biters. Democrats very nervous. It looks like things are neck and neck in those 2 states. Moving across the country, Colorado. This was one of the most expensive races in the country. No projection yet there either. Now, Democrats are feeling cautiously optimistic about California and Washington state. But here is the race that they are most nervous about, Katie. It's in Nevada, the mother of all races tonight. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who's in a very tight battle with Sharon Engel. She's a Tea Party candidate. She made a series of gaffes on the campaign trail, but she's still leading him in the polls.
And we'll be talking about that race, obviously, and watching it very closely tonight, Nancy, as we will be the others you mentioned. Nancy Cordes, thank you very much. Now, the economy has been the #1 issue in this election. This is what is fomenting so much voter anger, and that is Anthony Mason's beat. Anthony, tonight you're monitoring exit poll results for us, but no one knows better what a bleak climate we've had economically in this country for many months now.
It's true, Katie. 9 out of 10 voters today told us they're worried about the economy. The unemployment rate has been above 9% for a year and a half now, and 42% of the voters in our exit poll told us they're worse off today than they were 2 years ago. And what's interesting is that's even higher among independents. If you go to independents, fully half of independents in our survey told us that they're, in fact, worse off, 50%. This is significant because independents made the difference for President Obama 2 years ago, and when they did, more than half described themselves as moderate. 28% said they were conservative. Look what happens this year. The conservatives jump up to 38%. The moderates fall below half. In 2008, President Obama won 52% of the independent vote. That's flipped this year. The Republicans win by 55 to 40%. Katie?
Right, Anthony Mason. Anthony, thank you so much. And still ahead, where did the Democrats go wrong, and who will be the new power players in Washington? This is Election Night on CBS. The Republicans are throwing a grand old party tonight because they have regained control of the House of Representatives. They will be in charge of the new House in the 112th Congress. Let's take a look at the touchscreen in front of me. They need 218 seats to control the House of Representatives. By the time the night is over, they're going to need a net gain of 39 seats. They're well on their way to that. In fact, CBS News is projecting a net gain of 45 seats for the Republicans in the House of Representatives. But as we said earlier, it's going to be a much tougher climb for the Senate. They need to keep what they have, maintain their hold on their Republican seats, and then pick up 10 additional seats to get them to the magic number of 51. So far, they have, in fact, picked up seats in Arkansas, Indiana, and North Dakota. But the Democrats might have been sort of rained on their parade a bit because they kept seats in Connecticut and West Virginia in Democratic hands. For example, we'll look at the state of West Virginia. Joe Manchin, the very, very popular governor there, we've projected him a winner in the state of West Virginia and in the state of Connecticut as well. Richard Blumenthal, the long-serving attorney general, has defeated Linda McMahon, and her connections with Worldwide Wrestling and her harsh commercials against Richard Blumenthal apparently turned off women voters 2-1. So as we said, the Republicans are really going to have to play the table the rest of the night if in fact they are to regain control of the Senate. Whatever the case is, in the House of Representatives, Nancy Cordes, there are going to be a lot of fresh new faces with a lot of power.
That's right, Katie. In fact, take a look at this video from back in 2007 when John Boehner handed the Speaker's gavel over to Nancy Pelosi. He's been working hard to get it back ever since. He's going to be the man most likely leading the House. He's 61 years old. He's been in office for 20 years. He's been a fierce opponent of the president's agenda these past 2 years. Do not expect that to change. His number 2 will likely be Eric Cantor of Virginia. He'll be the House Minority Leader.
He's considered one of the young guns on Capitol Hill, despite the fact he's 47 years old. But he's kind of a new breed of Republican, isn't he, Nancy?
Exactly, Katie. And he'll be joined by several other members of that breed who will be taking over key House committees. And this is where a lot of the power lies, because it's in those committees where they really have the power to shape legislation. So who's going to be running some of those committees? Well, Darrell Issa of California is going to be leading the Oversight Committee with the power to investigate the White House. Dave Camp of Michigan, who will become the chair of Ways and Means, will have control over tax policy. And Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, one of those self-proclaimed young guns that you mentioned, along with Eric Cantor, will likely become the chair of the Budget Committee, another very important committee.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thanks so much. Let's go to our Democratic strategist, Jamal Simmons, and our Republican strategist, Dan Bartlett, to talk about these new faces in the nation's capital. First, Dan, what kind of speaker is John Boehner likely to be? Are we going to see gridlock on Capitol Hill, or is he a bit of a compromiser?
Well, John Boehner, the finely tanned man from Ohio who's taking over as the Republican Speaker of the House, is actually very well liked, not only within his own caucus, but behind the scenes. He actually has great relationships with key Democrats, and that will be the key, is to try to forge a coalition of the new entrants, many of them backed by the Tea Party. A lot of freshmen, could be upwards of 60 Republican freshmen potentially. That's a big block of voters who have come in with a mandate to say no to the White House. So he's got a complicated situation on his hands, but also he's got a lot of public sentiment behind the agenda that they ran on, which is stop the spending, make sure that we enact pro-economic policies, and that's what he's going to try to focus on. And John Boehner, a lot of people think, even though he's been there for a long time, that he may be the right person to do it because of those relationships he has behind the scenes.
Now, Jamal Simmons, how will the White House deal with this new breed of Republican on Capitol Hill? You have many Tea Party candidates, as Dan said, who believe they have a mandate to do things like repeal health care reform and make government much smaller. How is he going to respond to that?
Katie, I think the president's going to look for some ways to offer kind of his hand out to the new Republicans in Congress, maybe focus on things like the budget, look for something like competitiveness and science, technology, education, that sort of thing where people can join together and work together. But at some point, there will come a moment where the two parties are on opposite sides, and the president will look for, should look for, a moment to sort of define himself, define his principles, and even stand up against the Republican majority in the House to make sure his people know that he's still on the side of Democrats. At the same time, in the Democratic House side, if Nancy Pelosi chooses not to stay as the Democratic leader, you may have a little bit of a fight going on between Steny Hoyer, who's now the majority leader, and Chris Van Hollen, who ran the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And then the other person I put in that mix is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who may not be running for leader, but certainly has proven herself here.
All right, Jamal Simmons and Dan Bartlett, thanks so much. Well, how is the Tea Party responding to two of their victories tonight? Rand Paul in Kentucky and Marco Rubio in the state of Florida, just in the Senate alone. We're going to check in to a Tea Party party right after this. We now have some projections to make. Utah's next senator is Mike Lee, one of the first Tea Party candidates to take on the Republican establishment and win. He defeats conservative incumbent Bob Bennett, or defeated him in the primary, rather, foreshadowing the influence of the Tea Party movement. Let's take a look at some of the other races that we cannot project a winner in so far. In Pennsylvania, it's neck and neck between retired Navy Admiral Joe Sestak and former congressman against passionate anti-tax man Pat Toomey in the ultimate swing state. Obviously, we're watching very carefully. Joe Sestak ahead by just 2 percentage points right now, but it is too early to project and too tight to project a winner in that race. In the state of Illinois, Alexei Janulius, he's the state treasurer. He is running against Mark Kirk, a moderate Republican. Now, this is really important because this is Barack Obama's former Senate seat, so this has a lot of sentimental and meaning and significance for the White House, and they are watching this race very, very carefully. Also in the state of Wisconsin, another race that is very tight. Senator doesn't look that tight, but it's too early to project. Senator Russ Feingold, a Maverick senator, is running against Ron Johnson. He's a plastics manufacturer from Oshkosh who's put a lot of his own money into the race. In Nevada, again, this is really, actually in Colorado, Michael Bennett, who was appointed to fill in Secretary Salazar's seat, is running against Ken Buck, who is a Weld County District Attorney. Again, we'll be watching this race very, very carefully. Barack Obama took Colorado in 2008. And once again, a microcosm of what's happening here in this country. Majority Leader Harry Reid is running against Tea Party favorite Sharon Angle, in a very, very close race, and we cannot project a winner in Nevada yet there as well. Anthony Mason is following the results of our exit polls. Anthony, what drove the vote in this midterm election?
We want to take a look at the Tea Party, Katie, because they came out in big numbers. 40% of the voters in our exit poll today described themselves as Tea Party supporters, and 9 out of 10 of them said they believe that President Obama's policies have the country on the wrong track. Now, they feel strongly that the government is doing too much. 85% said that. They feel the stimulus plan is not working. 60% says it hurt the economy. They also feel strongly that Congress should repeal health care. 84% told us that. Now, it's very interesting, the makeup of the Tea Party. 90% are white, 3/4 are over the age of 45. They voted virtually as a block today of Tea Party supporters. 87% went with the Republican Party today, Katie.
All right. Thank you very much, Anthony Mason. 37 state houses are up right now, and the governor's races are considered very, very important. Haley Barbour is the governor of Mississippi and former head of the RNC, and some believe he's also a future presidential candidate. Governor Barbour, how do you think the Republicans are doing in the state house races so far?
Well, we're doing very well, and the important thing, Katie, is we're doing very well all over the country. 4 of the 6 New England governor's races are very competitive right now, with Republicans leading in 3. We're winning through the industrial Midwest. We're winning in the Southeast. We're winning in the Southwest and the Great Plains. Of course, the polls hadn't closed out west, but really we've had strong candidates and a great response. There are some close races, but right now it looks great.
What do you think is behind this Republican wave, if you will, taking over the House of Representatives, making considerable gains in the gubernatorial races?
Katie, midterm elections often are referenda on the president's policies, and tonight the American people are repudiating Barack Obama's policies. It's just as simple as that, whether it's outrageous spending, skyrocketing deficits, piling all this trillions of debt on our children and grandchildren, government-run health care system, big tax increase around the corner in January. The American people think that's bad stuff, and they look at the results and see that it's bad results.
All right, Governor Barbour, thank you. Some CBS stations will be leaving us now for local election returns. For everyone else, CBS News coverage of the midterm elections will continue.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Dana King. Just about 30 minutes until the polls close here in the Bay Area, and polling places are still very busy. Don Knapp is at one of them in the San Francisco Mission District tonight. Don.
Actually, Dana, we're in the Castro district, not far from the District District. We're on 18th between Church and Sanchez, and it is one of the most popular polling places around. They're going to see between 500 and 600 ballots before this evening is over, which is, as you said, about a half an hour from now. We went inside a while ago. Let's take a look at the videotape while I tell you what the precinct workers think is the reason that so many people turn out. It's that they are young people, and what brings them out, well, they are interested, of course, in the issues and the candidates, but they say to us, well, we always come out. We always vote.
I always vote, so I just feel it's a great opportunity to voice your opinion. It's a great vehicle it is your civic duty, but it's also your opportunity to voice your opinions.
I just feel like everybody should vote when they have the right to. So.
Now, did you make an effort to get home from work and vote tonight?
Yes, I did.
How hard was it to do that?
Not hard at all. Everybody just said, go ahead, leave.
So there's another half hour to get out and vote. There's probably a polling place within walking distance near you. And then it closes up at 8 o'clock, and then it's too late.
Yeah, there's still 34 minutes or so. And my philosophy is if you don't vote, you can't complain.
That's right.
All right, Don Knapp, thank you very much. Tonight, California decides who will lead the state for the next 4 years. Will it be Jerry Brown or Meg Whitman? Simon Perez is with the Brown campaign in Oakland. Simon.
Dana, Jerry Brown expected to show up here in about a half an hour to the Fox Theater in downtown Oakland to review the results. He started his day voting at a firehouse right near his Oakland Hills home. Then he went to the gym and then spent the rest of the afternoon just relaxing. He's planning to come here in about a half an hour to try to cap off a remarkable political feat, be reelected to governor 36 years after voters sent him to Sacramento for the first time. Now, for the other side of this campaign, let's go to Robert Lyles, Universal City, with Meg Whitman.
Well, Simon, thanks so much. As mentioned previously, we're 30 minutes to the close of polling stations here in California. Meg Whitman is expected to arrive here at Universal City at about 8:30. So the real question tonight, will this be a nail-biting wait for Meg Whitman, or has she convinced the voters? Has she convinced them that she will cut the state budget by $15 billion? Will she bring 2 million new jobs to California? Selling that vision has come at a very high price. We learned today that Meg Whitman has spent $141.5 million of her personal dollars to sell that vision to the state of California. By 8:30, we'll find out if the voters actually bought in. Dana?
All right, we will see. Polls close here in just 32 minutes. If you haven't voted, you still have a little bit of time left. We have reporters in Southern California as well as here in the Bay Area. And our continued coverage begins at 9 o'clock here on CBS 5. We will be on at least until midnight. We'll have another cut in and talk to you at 7:55.
Headline of the night, we have a power shift in Washington, D.C. CBS News is projecting that when all the votes are counted in this midterm election, the Republicans will have won control of the House of Representatives. The GOP needed a net gain of 39 seats. We estimate they will gain at least 50 by the time the night is over. John Boehner will likely replace Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, but the battle for the Senate continues. The Republicans need a net gain of 10 seats. So far, they've taken 3 seats from the Democrats. In Indiana, Dan Coates will succeed the retiring Evan Bayh. In Arkansas, John Bozeman unseats incumbent Blanche Lincoln. And in North Dakota, John Hoeven won the seat that retiring Democrat Byron Dorgan now holds. It's election night here on CBS.
We are in a difficult election. We can fix the United States Congress. That's what elections are for.
And welcome back, everyone. You cannot talk about this election cycle without mentioning a movement that began in the summer of last year and soon caught fire. We're talking about the Tea Party movement. Our CBS News exit poll today found 41% of voters are Tea Party supporters. In fact, there are 3 Tea Party victors in the Senate alone. We have Rand Paul, who has won in the state of Kentucky, Marco Rubio, who's won the Senate seat in the state of Florida, and Utah's next senator, as we mentioned, is Mike Lee, one of the first Tea Party candidates to take on an establishment Republican. Byron Pitts is at a Tea Party in the nation's capital. Byron, they must be feeling pretty good there tonight.
Oh, Katie, you're right. The mood here is festive. This is one of a number of Tea Party events across the country tonight. When it was announced earlier that the Republicans had regained control of the House, this room erupted. People were chanting USA, USA. They were hugging. People were applauding. Make no mistake, this has been a big night for the Tea Party. The Republican Party would not have had a success this evening without their support. According to the latest CBS News exit poll, 40% of the people who voted tonight say they are Tea Party supporters, and 21% say they are strong supporters of the Tea Party. Joining us now is Mark Meckler, who's co-founder of the Tea Party Patriots, the largest Tea Party organization. Now, I know you're a lawyer by training, never involved in politics, been on the road for 2 weeks. What's this moment mean to you?
You know, it's incredible. This is actually the starting point, though. Really, we're just getting started. I mean, it feels great. Everybody's celebrating, but the real work starts tomorrow.
I heard someone say from the podium that the Republican Party, they're on probation.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a nice way to put it. They have a long track record of doing the wrong thing. We intend to hold their feet to the fire starting tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, sir. So, Katie, that's the mood here at this Tea Party event. They're pleased, but they still see that work has to be done, and they want to hold the Republican Party accountable now that they're back in charge.
All right, Byron Pitts. Byron, thanks so much. Jeff Greenfield and Bob Schieffer, let's just do a quick recap of the Tea Party. It really did re-energize the GOP at a time when everyone thought the party was lost, and yet beating some establishment candidates. For example, Christine O'Donnell beat Mike Castle in Delaware. They lost an all but guaranteed seat in that state.
Right, and that may be what cost him the Senate. The remarkable thing was this run of Tea Party folks going up against even conservative Republicans like Bob Bennett in Utah, that he didn't even make the primary. Like in Alaska, they unseated Lisa Murkowski with Joe Miller. That seat is perhaps in jeopardy. Ken Buck in Colorado unseated a former lieutenant governor who was considered a favorite to beat the Democrat Michael Bennet. So at the same time the Tea Party folks may be costing the Republicans the Senate, they have sent a very clear warning to the Republicans. We are not in your pocket. This is not like Labor and the Democratic Party. We don't like you guys spending any more than we did the Democrats, and that's going to be a potential source of real conflict next year in Washington.
Meanwhile, Nancy Cordes, how have the Tea Party candidates fared in the House of Representatives? There were 7 running in the Senate, a heck of a lot more running in the House, well over 100.
That's right, Katie. A number of Republicans who really jumped on this Tea Party bandwagon. They knew that this was where all the energy was, and they were endorsed by Tea Party groups. So far tonight, 10 Republicans who affiliate themselves with the Tea Party have won just in the competitive races that we're watching. There are far more Republicans who are in safe seats who are winning as well. There's going to be a big Tea Party caucus in the House.
All right, Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thanks so much. We're going to go now to 3 of our correspondents who are out in the field covering key races. Dean Reynolds is covering the Senate race in Illinois. He is at Kirk headquarters. Dean, what's the latest from there?
Well, Katie, it couldn't be closer. This race is neck and neck all night long. Alexi Giannoulias, the Democrat, has been ahead, but Mark Kirk, the Republican, has been gaining steadily all evening to the point now where they are separated only by the thinnest of margins. So it's a mood of anxiety both here at Kirk headquarters and downtown in Chicago at Giannoulias headquarters in this huge battle for the very prestigious seat once occupied by Barack Obama. Katie?
All right, Dean Reynolds. Dean, thanks very much for that update. Meanwhile, Ben Tracy is covering that very tight Reed-Engel race that is unfolding in Nevada. He's at Harry Reid's headquarters in Las Vegas. Ben, what's the latest from there?
Well, Katie, you've talked about the Tea Party, and you've mentioned that there is no race they would want to win more tonight than this race right here in Nevada. This is ground zero for their battle. If they could unseat the most powerful Democrat in the U.S. Senate, that would be huge for their movement, huge for Republicans, and a big loss for Democrats. The polls closed here just a little over a half hour ago, so there aren't any results out yet, but we are expecting this to be somewhat of a long night because this has been a very close race heading right into Election Day. And if you're wondering where all the people are, well, the food and the booze is on the other side of the room, so that's where everyone is
I
tonight.
was wondering where all that. I was feeling a little sorry for you, Ben, tonight, so I'm glad there are some people there gathered around the food and the booze. Thanks so much, Ben. Meanwhile, Bill Whitaker is covering the Barbara Boxer Carly Fiorina Senate race in California. He's at Boxer headquarters in Los Angeles tonight. And Bill, I know that it was neck and neck for a while there, but Barbara Boxer really pulled ahead in recent weeks.
Well, the Democrats here think that they will be able to swim against the national tide and hold on to an office here and perhaps even make some strides in other races. In that hotly contested Senate race between incumbent Barbara Boxer and Republican challenger Carly Fiorina, the Democrats say that they've been watching some key polling places and they've been encouraged that the Democratic turnout in those polling places has been much higher than they had expected. So they're expecting that turnout to make the difference for Barbara Boxer tonight. In the governor's race between Jerry Brown and Republican newcomer Meg Whitman, this has been the most expensive governor's race in American history, with Meg Whitman pumping more than $140 million of her own money into the race. Well, tonight, the Democrats believe that their massive get out the vote effort is going to make the difference for Brown in that race tonight as well.
All right.
Katie?
Bill Whitaker. Bill, thank you so much. And when we come back, we're going to check on some key governor's races, in addition to the one that's going on in California right now, because they could play a big role in future elections. It is election night here at CBS. And if you're just joining us this election night 2010, CBS News is projecting the Republicans will in fact take control of the House of Representatives, but the battle for the Senate continues. Now, in addition to the congressional elections, there are 37 governor's races going on right now. And let us tell you the results of some of those races. In Pennsylvania, it's a Republican pickup as Attorney General Tom Corbett wins the election to replace term-limited Ed Rendell. His prize for besting Democrat Dan Honorado, could be a looming budget crisis, so he's going to have his hands full. In the state of Michigan, self-proclaimed one tough nerd Rick Snyder, who's the former head of Gateway Computers, defeats Democrat Virg Bernero. In Texas, in the Lone Star State, no surprise here, Rick Perry becomes the longest-serving governor in Texas history as he wins his bid for a third term in office. And in the state of Florida, this has been a closely watched race. Florida Chief Financial Officer Alex Sink, it's unclear. We cannot project a winner in this race. She is running against businessman Rick Scott. And Ohio, it's too close to project as well. Former Congressman John Kasich is running against Democratic incumbent Ted Strickland, a very popular governor who saw his popularity decrease with a very tough economy. CBS News political analyst John Dickerson in Washington is following all these races. And John, Ohio is particularly important for the White House.
Well, that's absolutely right. You know, winning a state like New York is great for Democrats, but Ohio is one of the 9 presidential battleground states. Strategists from both parties are already looking ahead to the next election because a candidate, if there's a governor of their party in a state, it gives them a leg up in terms of organization. Of the 9 battleground states at play tonight, 121 electoral votes. Barack Obama won all of them in 2008. And Pennsylvania, as you mentioned, looks like it will have a Republican governor. So that means the president has to hope that Ohio and Florida come through to help him with his next presidential race.
And then let's talk about the fact that many of these winning governors will be redrawing congressional districts, John.
every 10 years after the census, they redraw the congressional districts for the House. The governor plays a big role in that. The party in charge tries to design those districts in a way that gets their members elected. Rick Perry now going to be the governor of Texas again. Well, last time in Texas they did this, the Republicans were in charge of the process. They took 6 congressional seats away from the Democrats. And once this redrawing happens, it sticks for 10 years until the next census, Katie.
All right, John Dickerson in Washington. John, thank you so much. We are witnessing, as we've been reporting, a major power shift in Washington. CBS News projects that when all the votes are counted, the Republicans will retake control of the House. They needed a net gain of 39 seats. We now estimate they'll pick up at least 50 after all is said and done. As for the Senate, as we've been saying all night long, that is a much tougher call. The Republicans need a net gain of 10 seats. So far, they picked up 3 winning races in Arkansas, Indiana, and North Dakota. There you go. John Bozeman defeats Blanche Lincoln, denying her of a 3rd term. Dan Coates returns to the Senate after serving in the 90s, beating Congressman Brad Ellsworth. And in North Dakota, as we mentioned, John Hoeven, the governor, beats Tracy Potter by quite a lot. Now, the Democrats have denied 2 seats to the Republicans in the Senate. They held on to the seat in Connecticut, Chris Dodd's seat, and in West Virginia, Robert Byrd's seat, the seat he held for 50 years, remains in the blue column tonight. Now, by one estimate, nearly $4 billion has been spent on this year's midterm elections, blowing all previous records right out of the water. Where did all that dough go? Cheryl Atkinson in Washington has been at her usual post following the money. What can you tell us about that, Cheryl?
Katie, that estimate of $4 billion is by the time everything is counted up and said and done. But let's look at what's been counted so far. We're at $3.26 billion. That's the total money raised. And look at the split. Republicans are at $1.6 billion versus about $1.5 billion for Democrats. So while Republicans do have an overall money advantage, it is not the big blowout in money that some people thought, Katie.
All right, Cheryl Atkinson in Washington. Thanks so much. The headline of the night, the Republicans take control of the House. And when we return, we're going to talk to one of the new key players, the man expected to be Majority Leader Eric Cantor of Virginia. It's election night on CBS. The Republicans take back the House. The Democrats still hanging on to the Senate, but the battle's not over. The night is still fairly young. Let's go back now to Anthony Mason, who's following our exit polling. And Anthony, health care reform was an issue we asked voters about today.
Yeah, Katie, it was. It may have been the signature achievement of the Obama administration in its first 2 years, but voters don't seem to be buying it. It ranked a distant second among most important issues today, far behind the economy. When we asked voters what they wanted to see happen with health care reform, well, nearly half told us they'd actually like to see it repealed. And when you break that down according to party lines, well, it's not surprising to see that an overwhelming majority of Republicans, 81%, want it repealed, but actually a majority of independents, 53%, do too. So the president may have sold Congress on health care reform, but he does not seem to have sold voters today. Katie?
All right. Thank you very much, Anthony Mason. Meanwhile, Congressman Eric Cantor of Virginia is the House Republican whip. He is expected to be the majority leader in the new House with John Boehner as Speaker. Congressman Cantor, thanks for joining us.
Katie, good to be with you.
Let me ask you about health care reform. I know in the Republicans' Pledge to America, repealing health care is a major step on the agenda, but how exactly do you propose to do that?
Well, you know, Katie, tonight's election is about listening to the people, and that was the message that's being sent across this land, is they don't like this health care bill, and they want to see us focus on jobs. And there's just been no results that match the expectations of the people. So I believe that when we take majority in January, I hope that we're able to put a repeal bill on the floor right away, because that's what the American people want. They understand that this bill is going to bankrupt this country and take away the health care that most people in this country know and like. The problem is, Katie, we haven't focused on the problem, which is the cost. It's too expensive. Healthcare is just, the costs are out of control, and we've got to go back and begin to give the American people what they want, which is lower costs and higher quality,
but Congressman
not this
Cantor,
abomination that was passed.
I've just got to interject and tell you that may be true that many Americans do not like healthcare reform, but according to our exit polls, Congressman, you know, 48% of the people we talked to wanted to repeal it, but 47% wanted to leave it as is or, in fact, expand it. So this is hardly a mandate if you listen to our exit polls.
Well, you know, I just saw the polling that you just showed, and it said that 80-some% of Republicans are for repeal, and actually 51% of independents are for repeal. So it seemed to me there's a majority of Americans who say, you know what, start over. We don't like the status quo, and we've got to get costs down and give people a choice and start accentuating the doctor-patient relationship and get government out of the business of deciding the proper care. That's what Republicans are going to be about, Katie. That's what the American people are saying tonight. You know what, this administration's had 20 months. And all the promises that have been made about the most important issue, which is the economy, have been broken. And they are fed up, and they have a reason to be fed up.
Well, let me ask you, you guys have said you are going to cut $100 billion in discretionary spending. That doesn't include military or entitlement spending. So what specifically will Republicans cut?
Well, we have put on the table an attempt to put discretionary spending back to 2008 levels, and that means an across-the-board reduction in spending. And you know, if you think about it, Katie, in 2008, the sun rose and set, and we're saying let's get back to pre-stimulus levels. Let's get back to some fiscal discipline. That's a first step that we can start and bring down the kind of spending that has occurred in Washington. But, you know, listen, the American people, they know that they can go about creating jobs. The small business people are waiting for a signal from Washington that they're going to stop making it more difficult to put capital to work. That's what tonight is about, too, Katie. It's about the fact that people are looking at Washington and saying, don't you hear me? You know, we want opportunity. We like success. Stop maligning those who are successful.
All right, Congressman Eric Cantor, again, thanks so much for talking with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Katie.
And Bob Schieffer and Jeff Greenfield, you know, they're big ambitions for House Republicans, but what in reality can they do in terms of spending cuts, health care reform, repeal, et cetera?
The first thing to say about what the congressman just said, that if the House can find some way to pass something to repeal health care, the president will veto it if it passes the Senate, and it'll take more votes to repeal health care than it took to pass it. So that's going to be a very tall order. But I don't think that's going to be what's going to come first. I think they're going to put spending bills on the floor once a week for the first 12 weeks of this administration. That's what John Boehner told me they're going to do. And if they hear what people are saying to them tonight, people want to work on the economy. That's what is the overriding thing that bothers people.
But they want tax cuts and they want to reduce the deficit. Jeff, is that really possible?
I think, to be blunt, a lot of Americans believe in the hot fudge sundae diet. They hate entitlements, but they don't want Social Security or Medicare cut. They want a spending cut, but they want their projects informed. And that clash is one of the things that every president and every Congress has to deal with, and the Tea Party folks coming in as freshman Republicans just may ratchet that difficulty up. It's going to be a tough next year in Washington, Katie.
Do you think we're going to see a lot of gridlock, Bob?
The first thing that's going to happen is how are these Republicans that are there now, the leaders, going to deal with these new Republicans, because they're a different breed of cat.
So they've got an inner battle before they deal with the White House.
Yep.
Some CBS stations will be leaving us. For everyone else, CBS News coverage of the midterm elections continue.
Good evening, I'm Dana King. Hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots are being rejected in Santa Clara County. Kit Doe is in San Jose to show us what the problem is and what an army of employees is trying to do about it. Kit.
Dana, we're live here outside the Registrar of Voters office where workers are waiting for the polls to close and the ballots to arrive here. But inside, though, all day it's been a different story as workers have been using this, an eraser to clean more than 100,000 ballots that were dirty. The Registrar's office is calling it a smudge. Now, look closely here. There's a faint discoloration that runs along the fold of that mail-in ballot. Counting machines see this as an error and reject the ballots. 100,000 rejected so far. Workers have been staying through the weekend and late every day using erasers to clean the smudge by hand on every single mail-in ballot. The county assures voters that the votes cannot be changed since they're made in ink, and they're confident that the dirty ballots will not cause a significant delay in the counting. Now, you're saying this is not a problem?
Absolutely not. If it is, we're taking care of it.
Is this election tainted, do you think, because of this?
I don't think it's tainted. Again, we feel very confident about it. And again, in this, now that we've learned about this, like I said, we're taking every step, everything we can do to make sure that all the other ones are done correctly.
The printing company has agreed to pay for all the overtime. The cause of the smudge is still unknown. Dana?
Well, it's not exactly the hanging chad of this election, but it's something to take note of. Kit Doe in San Jose, thank you very much. Now, the polls close in just a couple of minutes, in fact, 3 minutes. Don Knapp is at a polling station in San Francisco's Castro district tonight. Don?
Dana, they're still running in here. I don't know what the other precincts are doing, but this precinct is really bringing in a lot of votes today. It's in the Castro. It's on 18th. Perhaps that's the reason. But before this day is over, which is, as you said, a couple of minutes from now, they expect to see 500 or 600 ballots come through here. Why? Let's take a look inside. We went in a little bit earlier today. When we went in, it was right after the dinner hour, so there are a lot of people rushing home from work that got inside. But another reason for the turnout, according to one of the precinct workers, is that there's a large number of young people who come here to vote. And the two that we talked with said it wasn't so much particular issues, it was that they always vote.
I always vote, so I just feel it's a great opportunity to voice your opinion. It's a great vehicle it is your civic duty, but it's also your opportunity to voice your opinions.
I just feel like everybody should vote when they have the right to. So.
Now, did you make an effort to get home from work and vote tonight?
Yes, I did.
How hard was it to do that?
Not hard at all. Everybody just said, go ahead, leave.
That's the spirit. So the polls close in just a few minutes. Too late for everybody else, but there's still some folks running in trying to do it at the last minute.
And
Dana?
as long as you're in line at 8 o'clock, you get to vote.
That's right.
All right. Don Knapp in the Castro, thank you very much. And, of course, the other big story today, the Giants. They're back home after winning the World Series. While most were sleeping, hundreds of hardcore fans greeted the World Series champs when they got back to San Francisco early this morning. Tonight, the preparations are underway for the Victory Parade tomorrow. That parade starts near Montgomery and Washington streets. It'll travel down Montgomery to Market and then to the Civic Center Plaza. It starts at 11 o'clock. It's going to be crowded, so if you'd like to watch it right here on CBS 5, please do so. We'll be live at 11. In the meantime, we'll be back with more election coverage at 9 o'clock. We hope to see you then.